The bed was still warm when I slid my hand across to her side, but she was already gone. Again, her phone charger was still plugged in. Makeup bag open on the dresser. Lipstick uncapped like she left in a rush. The red one. The one she only wore when she wasn't coming home for me. There was a perfume cloud still hanging in the air. Too strong, too deliberate. She wanted me to notice. Or maybe she didn't care at all anymore. Either way, I sat there on the edge of the mattress, looking at that ridiculous dent in her pillow, wondering how many nights I'd done this exact thing, pretending not to care. I walked to the bathroom and opened the cabinet behind the mirror. Her stuff lined every shelf. Her creams, her serums, the perfume I bought last Christmas that she forgot she owned. Behind it all, wedged in the corner, was the tiny voice recorder I placed there 6 nights ago. I never wanted to be that guy. Never thought I'd reach for this kind of truth. But when silence becomes a second language in your home, you start listening in other ways. I pressed play. A burst of static. Then her voice. He left the light on again, like a puppy waiting at the door. A man laughed. You're cold. He doesn't notice anything. He's just there. I could swap him out for a houseplant, and he'd say thank you. She was laughing too. Loud. Drunk. Loose. Anyway, she added, once I'm sure the money's transferred, I'll tell him. Or maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just vanish. Pause. More laughter. Kissing sounds. I stopped the recording. That was enough. No screaming. No broken mirrors. No tears. Just a slow, bone-deep silence that settled into my chest and stayed there. I took the recorder, walked downstairs, and placed it on the kitchen counter like a farewell note only I could read. Then I left the house. Not to drive. Not to cry. I went to the place I'd been rebuilding in secret, a quiet rental 3 miles away, with 1 plate, 1 fork, 1 blanket, and no ghosts. That night, I slept better than I had in a year. And the next day, I went back, not to talk, but to finish what I started. She was in the living room, wearing that same red lipstick, pretending to read a magazine. I said nothing, just walked past her, grabbed my charger, my watch, my last 3 shirts from the hallway closet. When I turned to leave, she didn't even ask where I was going. She just smiled and whispered, "We both know you'd never leave." I didn't look at her when I answered. I already did. Then I walked out. And less than 24 hours later, when she looked through the window and saw who moved into her place, the same smile dropped off her face like dead weight. She started shaking, and I just stood across the street and watched. I don't know what I expected when I parked across the street the next morning. Maybe a tantrum, maybe a screaming phone call, or maybe, just maybe, she wouldn't notice anything at all, like she hadn't noticed me for months. But that's not what happened. She stood at the window in her old pink bathrobe, cradling a mug she never used unless she was hungover. Her fingers were trembling so bad, she had to hold the cup with both hands. She wasn't drinking from it, just holding it, her mouth slightly open, her head tilted, like she couldn't process what she was seeing. And what she was seeing was him, standing in the driveway, unloading the last of his boxes. Not her lover. No, not some rebound fling. Nothing so petty. It was her father, the man she hadn't spoken to in nearly a decade. The man she'd called a manipulative narcissist. The one she swore she'd never forgive. The one she said destroyed her childhood. The one she used as her lifetime excuse for every wall she ever built between us. And yet, there he was, holding my keys, carrying in a folding chair and a duffel bag, laughing with my neighbor like they'd known each other for years. She hadn't seen him in person since 2015, but she was seeing him now on my porch, in my space. I didn't bring him back to heal old wounds. I didn't do it to prove a point. I did it because she once told me he could walk into fire with a straight face. And that's exactly the kind of man I needed to finish what she started. Let me explain. 6 days ago, after I listened to that recording, I didn't just walk away. I met up with a man I never thought I'd willingly share air with. I told him everything, what I knew, what I heard, what she was planning with her new mystery man. And her father, this cold, brutal man with eyes like frosted steel, didn't flinch. He just sat back, sipped his whiskey, and said, "If she thinks you're weak, then let her watch you burn her house down with your silence." He offered his help before I could ask. Said he'd move in. Said he didn't need a reason beyond. She needs to learn what it means to lose. I couldn't tell if he wanted to punish her or save her. Maybe both. So I gave him the spare key, and that was that. I didn't expect her to fall apart so quickly. When she finally opened the front door and stepped outside barefoot, I saw something new in her eyes. Not anger. Not guilt. Fear. Pure, confused fear. She called out to him. He didn't look up. She called again, voice cracking. He turned, slow, and just stared. Like a mirror she didn't want to look into. She stepped back. Almost stumbled. She looked around like she'd walked onto the wrong stage in the middle of the wrong play. And I watched it all from my car. Hands steady. Eyes wide open. The day before, she whispered that I'd never leave. Now she couldn't even walk into her own home. She had no idea how far I'd already gone, or how much I'd already replaced. And this was just the first ripple. I didn't see her for 3 days. She didn't call, didn't text, didn't post a single thing on her social media. And for Lynette, that silence was more unnatural than anything I could have done. Her last photo before all this, her holding a margarita on a rooftop bar, captioned, "Earned this." It had been posted 40 minutes after the night she whispered that I'd never leave. I guess I wasn't supposed to see it. But I did. Just like I saw the comments under it. One from him, the man with the wrist tattoo I'd zoomed in on from the hotel security footage. He wrote, "Round 2 next week," with a devil emoji. I didn't reply. I just screenshotted it and saved it to a folder called Departure Fuel. Now, 3 days after I walked out, Lynette came back to the house like she was approaching a crime scene. She parked 2 blocks down and walked with her hood up like she didn't want the neighbors to recognize her. When she reached the driveway, she stood there for a solid minute. Then she rang the bell to her own home. Her hands were shaking again. Her father answered. I watched from the corner of the next street. Not through binoculars, not through some weird high-tech camera, just with my eyes. I stood behind a crooked wooden fence, unseen but not hiding. I needed to witness this. She tried to smile. He didn't smile back. She tried to speak. He lifted a finger, the same way he used to hush her as a teenager when she'd talk back. It worked like a spell. She froze mid-sentence. Her eyes darted past him into the house. Maybe she thought I'd be there. Maybe she thought she could still sweet-talk her way back into something. Then I saw him lean closer and say something I couldn't hear. She looked like she'd been slapped. Her mouth moved fast, angry, frantic. She pointed at the house. At him. At herself. She kept saying one word over and over. I couldn't read her lips, but I didn't have to. I knew the word was mine. And then he stepped aside and let her in. That part one wasn't expecting. I waited. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. The longer she stayed inside, the more I started to question whether this had been a mistake. If maybe I'd opened a door I couldn't close. If maybe he'd let her win. But then she came back out. Alone. No shoes. Eyes red. Clutching a plastic grocery bag full of what looked like random junk, a phone charger, a single sock, a bottle of shampoo. No dignity. No calm. She didn't even walk back to her car. She just kept going. On foot. Into the neighborhood. Into the evening. Into nowhere. I texted her father just 2 words. What happened? He replied instantly. I gave her the box. I didn't ask what box. I already knew. It was the same box Lynette had forced me to hide in the back of our closet years ago, filled with her old journals, a hospital wristband, letters she never mailed. Things she once said would destroy her if anyone ever read them. I never did. I never even peeked. But her father? Oh, he read every page. And what I learned next, what he learned, made her affair look like a paper cut compared to the surgery that was coming. Because she didn't just lie about her lover. She lied about her past. And her father, the man she swore she'd cut out of her life forever, was about to cut right back, with truth. I got to the house the next morning before the sun had fully burned through the fog. Her father was already outside, sitting on the porch steps with his sleeves rolled up and a cup of gas station coffee in one hand. He didn't say anything at first, just nodded at the empty space next to him. I sat down. He took a long sip and then handed me a small bundle of letters, rubber-banded, yellowed, brittle like old leaves. Start with those, he said. They're the beginning of the end. I unfolded the first one, dated 2007. It was written in Lynette's handwriting, but the tone was something else entirely. It wasn't poetic or soft like the things she used to write me in college. This was raw, sharp, angry, addressed to someone named Henry. But there was no Henry in her life. Not in any story she'd ever told me. The letter said, I hate what we did to Mom. You pretended it was all her fault. But we both know I said the words. We both know who started it. Stop acting like I was some victim. I knew what I was doing. And I enjoyed it. I stopped reading. Her father didn't look at me. He stared at the yard, eyes distant. Henry was her brother, he said flatly. My son. My firstborn. I couldn't speak. He handed me the second letter. It only got worse. What she told me, what she told everyone, was that her family imploded because her father drank too much, yelled too loud, and hit too hard. She used those stories to explain her mood swings, her affairs, her avoidance of motherhood. I was raised in chaos, she'd say. You can't fix what's broken at the root. But these letters, they didn't show a broken girl. They showed a clever one. Dangerous. Capable of playing people like chess pieces and watching them crumble with no more emotion than someone swatting flies. She blamed her mom for something that never happened. Ran away, made herself the tragic lead in a story she wrote with no edits. She cut ties with her family one by one until no one who knew the original version of her was left. Except her father. And he'd kept the box all these years. Not to use it. Not to shame her. But because he said one day she'd lie to someone she shouldn't. One day she'd destroy someone who didn't deserve it. And when that happened, he wanted to be ready. She did it to you, he told me. And I wasn't going to stay quiet while she twisted another man into hating himself. I asked where he found the letters. He said they were shoved inside a false panel in the old family dresser, the one she forced me to sell when we moved. She must have forgotten they were even there. Or thought no one would ever dare dig that deep. But he had. And now the truth wasn't just out, it was in my hands. I felt cold. Not angry. Not betrayed. Just hollow. Like someone had scooped out my understanding of her and replaced it with static. For years, I thought I was the weak one. The fragile one. The man who didn't get it. I thought she was layered, complex, damaged, but trying. But now I saw the pattern. Every time someone got too close to the truth, she erased them. Made them the villain. Moved on without a scratch. And I was next on that list. Until I wasn't. Until I walked away without asking permission. Until I handed the keys to the one man who remembered exactly who she used to be and wasn't afraid to hold a mirror to her face. That night, she called. First time in 4 days. I let it ring. I didn't block her. I wanted her to feel the line between us still existed, but I wasn't reaching across it anymore. She left a voicemail. Her voice cracked immediately. Not with sadness. With panic. She asked, "Why is he doing this? Why would you let him in? Do you even know what he's capable of?" And that's when I realized something that chilled me more than anything else. She wasn't afraid of what I knew. She was afraid of what he might tell me next. The voicemail sat in my phone like a landmine. I played it once, then again, slow, careful, dissecting every word like it was evidence. She was unraveling. But it wasn't guilt I heard. Not sorrow. Lynette didn't sound like someone trying to win me back. She sounded like someone who'd lost control of the narrative and didn't know how to spin the next chapter. I'd heard that tone before, in meetings where clients realized their entire pitch had collapsed mid-sentence, and they were grasping for anything that sounded like authority. But this wasn't a business deal. This was a woman staring down the barrel of her real history. And for the first time, she didn't get to write the ending. That same night, her father texted me. She showed up again. At 11 p.m., demanding to take the box back. He sent a picture along with it. She was standing on the porch, hair wet from the rain, mascara streaked, wearing one of my old hoodies like it was a shield. That hit me harder than it should have. I knew exactly which one it was. Faded navy, too long in the sleeves, the one she used to steal on Sunday mornings. I used to find it bunched under her pillow, still warm. Back then, that meant something. Now it just felt like another prop in her act. I didn't respond. I didn't call. I didn't check her social pages. I just sat in the quiet and stared at that photo. My ex-wife, because that's what she was now, whether on paper or not, looked like a ghost. Not haunted. Just not real. The next day, I went back to the house. I wasn't planning to stay. I just needed to feel the doorframe again, touch the kitchen counter, look at the spaces I'd once loved and remind myself they weren't mine anymore. Her father was in the dining room, standing over the box like it was sacred. "I didn't tell you everything," he said, "because part of me hoped she'd tell you first." He pulled out a folder from the bottom. Inside were photocopies of police reports, medical evaluations, therapy referrals, even a signed statement from her former high school principal. I scanned the pages and felt my stomach twist. When Lynette was 17, there had been an incident at a summer retreat, something involving a much younger boy, 2 assistants, and a cover story that was swallowed by everyone because her parents paid for silence. I kept flipping, page after page, until the weight of what I was reading made my hands tremble. She used people, her father said. Even then. Especially then. She didn't know how not to. He told me something else too, something he hadn't put in the box. 2 years ago, when she had convinced me we were trying again, she'd secretly reached out to her old friend Hal, a man I'd never met but had heard her talk about in these weird, overly casual tones. I always thought it was harmless. Turns out, Hal was married. And Lynette didn't just get involved with him. She manipulated his wife into thinking she was the victim, called the woman at work, accused her of infidelity, even tried to ruin her reputation when Hal wouldn't leave his family. I asked why she did it. Her father just stared at me and said, because she couldn't handle not being the center of someone's world. I left the house feeling like I had inhaled something toxic. Back at my apartment, I sat on the couch in the dark, trying to make sense of the woman I thought I knew. Not the affair, that was just the smoke. But the fire underneath? The years of lies, half-truths, character assassinations, performative grief. She didn't just cheat. She didn't just fall out of love. She rewrote her own origin story, made herself the survivor of a war she started, and painted every casualty as an abuser. And I had believed it all. That night, around 2 a.m., someone knocked on my apartment door. Slow. Measured. Like they knew I was awake. I looked through the peephole. It was her. No umbrella. No apology in her eyes. Just that same sweatshirt. And behind it, a look I hadn't seen before. Not rage. Not guilt. Desperation. But not the kind you beg with. The kind that breaks things. And when I opened the door, she said one thing, just one, that chilled me more than all the letters and files and secrets combined. I need you to come with me, she whispered. Because something's happened. And you're the only one who can explain it. I didn't move at first. I just stood there in the doorway, barefoot, wearing the same shirt I'd slept in for 3 nights. Her voice was too calm, too rehearsed. But something in her posture, the rigid hands, the way her shoulders curled inward, that wasn't acting. That was real panic, and it wasn't about me. She repeated it. Something's happened. I didn't answer. I just stepped aside and let her in. Not because I trusted her, I didn't, but because I needed to know what could possibly rattle someone who never blinked when burning bridges. She walked past me like she'd been there 100 times. Like it was still her home. But this wasn't the house she decorated and ruled from. This was my space now, minimal, quiet, empty enough to think in. She sat on the edge of the couch. Her eyes kept scanning the floor like she was reading invisible messages in the carpet. Then she said it. There's a letter, she whispered. It's addressed to you. But it was mailed to me. That made me pause. She pulled it from her coat pocket, a standard white envelope, handwritten, no return address. My full name was written in clean black ink across the front. She handed it to me like it was radioactive. I opened it slowly, carefully, expecting more mind games. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed, with only 2 lines. He doesn't know everything. She lied to him too. Ask her what happened in 2011. There was no signature. No context. Just that. I looked up at her. Her face had gone pale. Her lips pressed together like she was trying to swallow something alive. What happened in 2011? I asked. She didn't speak for a long time. Just sat there with her hands in her lap, fingers twitching like they were trying to play piano chords in the silence. Then she whispered, "You were in Colorado. Remember?" Of course I remembered. It was a 10-month job assignment. I left in February, came back just before Christmas. We talked every day back then. She even visited once, stayed the weekend. Everything seemed fine. Quiet. Normal. But nothing in her story had ever been what it looked like. I had a miscarriage that year, she said. At home. Alone. You didn't know. I told you I got the flu. I didn't move. Didn't speak. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears. She continued. It wasn't yours. And just like that, the ground under every memory I had collapsed. I remembered that weekend. How distant she was. How she kept saying she felt tired, blaming the altitude. I remembered her brushing me off when I asked if she was okay. I remembered her packing her bags early, saying she had to get back for work. I never questioned any of it. I never once thought she was hiding a pregnancy, or that it wasn't mine. Now, sitting in front of me was a woman I had once tried to build a life with, and she was confessing to things that weren't just infidelities. They were fractures in time. Tiny detonations she'd buried under polite smiles and half-hugs. And each one of them had shaped who we became without me even knowing it. I looked at the letter again. She lied to him too. Her father. He didn't know about this either. I could tell from her face. This wasn't a move in her game. This was something she thought would stay buried forever. So who sent the letter? Who knows about 2011? I asked. She looked at me, and her face cracked for the first time in years. Not broken like someone guilty. Not destroyed. Just terrified. Only one person, she said. And he's not supposed to be out. Out of what? She didn't answer. I pressed harder. Who? Then she finally said the name. A name I hadn't heard in nearly a decade. A name that meant nothing at first, until I remembered it. The guy from her old office. The one who vanished after a workplace investigation. The one she swore had stalked her. The one I never met, because by the time I got back from Colorado, he was gone. You told me he was fired. He was. But not for that. She swallowed hard. He went to prison. For what? For blackmail. And suddenly everything inside me froze. Because now this wasn't just about betrayal. It wasn't just about her. There were other hands in this story, other eyes watching from places I never expected. She didn't come to me out of guilt. She came to me because her lies were finally outpacing her control. And someone out there knew the truth better than either of us. We sat in silence for almost 10 minutes after she said his name. I hadn't thought about Miles Traeger in years. Back then, he was just a name in a story I never asked enough questions about. A former coworker who'd made Lynette uncomfortable. That's what she told me. That he crossed boundaries. That HR stepped in. That she handled it. But now she was telling me he'd gone to prison. For blackmail. And that he was out. And that he was sending letters. She wouldn't look at me. Just stared at the edge of the coffee table, hands clenched between her knees. She didn't cry. She never cried unless someone was watching. I asked, "What did he have on you?" She shook her head slowly. "You don't understand. He's not just some angry guy. He's obsessed. He built a story about me in his head and blamed me when it cracked." "You mean like you've done with other people?" That hit. She flinched. Then she stood and started pacing like a defendant rehearsing for trial. He recorded everything. He was paranoid. Every meeting, every hallway conversation, he kept a mic in his tie. He thought it would protect him. Did it? She stopped pacing. No. Because eventually, I turned the story around. Told HR he was making me uncomfortable. I wasn't lying, not completely, but I left things out. I didn't speak. She went on. There was one night, after a company party. We kissed. I don't know why. It was brief. Stupid. But after that he changed. He started asking me questions, sending weird texts. I panicked. And the pregnancy? Her eyes snapped to mine. That wasn't him, she said immediately. That was someone else. A mistake I never told anyone about. I felt like I was standing in a room where every painting was hung backward, and no matter how I tried to turn them around, the image was never the same twice. She sat back down. Miles always said he had a copy of the recordings. He threatened to send them to you once. But I told him we were separated, that you wouldn't care. He stopped. Until now. She nodded. He must have seen something. A photo. The move. Something triggered him. He's always been waiting. I asked the obvious question. What's on those recordings? She didn't answer. I repeated myself. Still silence. And then, with a long, trembling breath, she said, "There's a file. On a flash drive. Hidden in the lining of my old leather duffel bag. If he still has it, it's bad." I didn't ask what she meant by bad. I could tell from her tone that this wasn't just infidelity or lies. This was deeper. Older. Something done in private that had the power to destroy publicly. And then I realized what she was really here for. Not to apologize. Not even to confess. She wanted help. She wanted protection. She wanted the one man who had loved her through her worst to stand between her and the monster she helped create. "I don't know what to do," she whispered. He sent another letter. This morning. It's in my car. We walked outside together. Her car was parked 2 blocks away, under a flickering streetlight. She opened the glove box and pulled out the envelope. This one was thicker. Inside was a USB drive and a single note. One file. One truth. Play it loud. She handed it to me like it was burning her skin. I didn't take it home. I drove straight to my office, late as it was, and plugged it into a clean, isolated laptop. There was only one file. A single audio clip, 32 minutes long. No title. No metadata. And the moment I hit play, my stomach dropped. Because the voice that filled the speakers wasn't hers. It was mine. I was on the phone. From years ago. Saying things I didn't remember. Revealing details about my job, my location, my project clients. Harmless in isolation, but dangerous in pattern. Then her voice joined. Coaching me. Prompting me. Guiding the conversation. And that's when I understood. She had used me. Set me up. Fed Miles information through me, under the guise of just talking. And then when it went sideways, when the company started asking questions about data leaks, she flipped it. Accused him. Saved herself. He didn't go to prison for blackmailing her. He went because he tried to expose what she did, and no one believed him. Until now. Until me. I ejected the drive. And for the first time in this entire unraveling mess, I felt real fear. Because Lynette hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. She'd used me as bait. And now the man she burned was free. And watching. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in the parking lot behind my office, staring at the flash drive in my hand like it might explode. 32 minutes. That's all it took to destroy the last piece of the narrative I had held onto, the version of myself who had once believed he was just the husband. The quiet man in the background. The fool. Now I knew better. I hadn't been passive. I had been targeted. Used. Weaponized. And that knowledge was heavy, but also strangely freeing. Because the worst thing someone can do is turn your heart into a tool. And once you see that tool in the mirror, you can never unsee it. But you can walk away from it. The next morning, I returned the flash drive to her. I didn't say anything when I handed it over. I didn't ask questions. I didn't give her a lecture. I just placed it on her passenger seat and walked away. She called out to me, voice cracking. "Aren't you going to say anything?" I stopped, not turning around. "No, Lynette. I'm done talking. You spent a decade rewriting reality. I just want to live mine now." She didn't follow me. Maybe for the first time, she understood what that silence really meant. That there were no more edits. No more rewrites. No second drafts. That night, I met with her father one last time. He stood at the edge of the porch, arms crossed, that same unreadable expression on his face. "She's always been like this," he said quietly. "You just finally stopped looking away." I nodded. "You gonna stay?" He shook his head. "I'm done too. I just wanted to make sure someone else finally saw what I've carried for years." He reached into his coat pocket and handed me one final letter, not from her, not from Miles. From her mother. It was addressed to me, dated years ago, never mailed. Her father had held on to it, not knowing if I'd ever be ready for it. I read it that night. It was short, heartfelt, raw. Her mother had apologized, not for Lynette's actions, but for staying silent. For watching her daughter become someone who hurt others and not knowing how to stop it. She thanked me for giving Lynette a version of love she herself had never been capable of offering. And she ended it with, "If you ever find yourself free from her, promise me you'll live a loud life. One where you're seen." That stayed with me. A month passed. No more letters. No more calls. I moved again, not out of fear, but closure. A better city, a better job offer, a chance to reset the version of myself that had existed only as someone else's shadow. And one morning, while sipping coffee on a balcony that finally felt like mine, a neighbor waved from across the street. She was holding a golden retriever puppy and wearing a hoodie from a college I once attended. Her smile wasn't flashy, just real, solid. She shouted over, "You the guy who just moved in?" I laughed, probably for the first time in a long time, and said, "Yeah, that's me." "Good," she said, grinning. "We needed someone quiet around here. Too much drama lately." We talked for 20 minutes. She never asked about my past. I never offered. And for once, that felt okay. Because I wasn't escaping anything anymore. I was just living. And I was finally free.